Oh, okay, I think I'm live. Oh, wait, no, not yet. Uh, okay, I'm live. Well, I tried this before and I screwed up. Well, actually, this wasn't ready yet. Anyway, for my political science class. I have to do something with one of the options is something with the presidential debate, so I'm doing that. Um, so I decided to make a reaction video out of it. If you want to be part of it, if you want to like have your voice in or whatever, um, let me get the invite link for Australia. I'm gonna put that in chat. It's also in the description. Uh, so if you want to be part of the basically you can be part of this stream by going to New Australia. It's part of the movie night anyway. Oh, hold on. Let me make sure that works. Now I hope. Well, I'm gonna go full screen with this, and then make sure that that doesn't break OBS. Hold on. Okay, good. It works. Okay. I'm gonna get started then, and I might make an edited version of this where I actually engage with it. Right now, this is just about having fun, making watching the circus.
I'm Executive Director of the Commission on... My name is Janet Brown. I'm Executive Director of the Commission on Presidential Debates, and I'd like to welcome you to the first presidential debate of 2020. There are a lot of people who have made extraordinary contributions to making this evening possible. And in a few moments, you will hear from two of our co-chairs to start the appreciation to those who have helped. Our third co-chair, Dot Ridings, is in Louisville, Kentucky tonight. Her leadership in debates goes back to 1976 and includes the presidency of the League of Women Voters. The CPD is the beneficiary of 33 years' worth of people who have been willing to put their name on our work. To all of those former presidents and chancellors of debate sites, to former moderators, to members of our Debates International Network who have set their clocks to 3 a.m. tomorrow morning to tune in live, we thank you with all our hearts. In 1987, Paul Kirk and Frank Fahrenkopf co-founded the CPD. I'd like to introduce
All right, this is boring. No.
You really should.
All right.
Most
I don't have any reactions to
since
this, so I'm just going to skip ahead so this isn't me staring at a guy talking for several minutes.
Not so thanks. Now I'd like to introduce
the
newest member
where do they
of
actually
the
start?
leadership team, Ken Wallach.
How long does it take them to get started?
Mihaljevic.
Yikes. Okay. I don't want to watch all this.
To Toby Cosgrove, we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. One housekeeping bit.
Yeah, that was like, what, 10, 15 minutes of just talking. Okay, this is very boring. Okay, wait.
No noise except
Why do they get cable news hosts to host
security
debates instead of someone?
Chris Wallace.
Well, I guess if the debate isn't really a debate, the moderator might as well not be a moderator.
Good evening from the Health Education Campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments, with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
How you doing, man? How are you? I'm well.
Gentlemen,
Is the screen sharing working? I have no idea what you're seeing right now because right. Says that he says he has no audio.
I know. I'm muted.
I know I was because I was saying it because I'm technically streaming, even though I know no one cares. Let me. What the? That's odd. All right, I can't share my entire screen because OBS is already doing that, but OBS doesn't come up as a thing I can share probably. But oh wait, okay, now it does, but there's no audio. Uh,
a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so
did you hear anything that time, or? Me. Oops. Oops. Wait, did okay, I keep hitting buttons without thinking about what I'm doing. Okay, I don't know why. Did you hear anything that time? I think the reason. Did you hear anything that time? Um, I think the reason it's worked in the past is because I wasn't trying to stream as well, but I have no idea. I don't know why it always makes it so difficult. Oh, oh yeah, that if hold on. Well, if you're watching the stream, you have audio. That means you have audio from the call and from the stream. But I meant, hold on, let me. Why is it so complicated? I've suggested that Generation Z form a join ranks with the boomers to object to technology not working. Okay. Tell me if you hear the video this time. Okay. Okay. Now, tell me if you hear it now because I just enabled desktop audio on OBS.
I'm ready.
Did you hear
Yep.
anything? Okay, so you heard that over Discord. Hopefully that isn't just my microphone, but whatever. At least it's working now.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend.
It's not working through Discord now, so can you turn on like subtitles or something?
Oh, yeah.
Succeed.
Anyway.
The late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up.
He's right about this. He absolutely does have the authority to make that appointment.
The problem is they didn't have the election, so they
whole
were stopped.
About
and probably that would happen
Supreme
in
Court
reverse
justices.
also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it.
Presidency were spent
President Trump,
stacking
thank
all of
you.
the courts.
Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, his midnight
First of all,
judges.
Thank you for doing this and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote
They
for
really
a
don't,
United
though.
States
That's kind of the
senators
point of the
and when they vote for the President
where
of the
the
United States.
Constitution says it's the president and
They're
Senate.
not going to get
Senate
that
wasn't even
chance
elected
now because
originally.
we're in the middle of an election already. Elections have
Yeah,
already started.
exactly.
The point of the court is
Tens
to
of
not
thousands
be
of people have already
democratic.
voted. And so the thing that should happen.
Well,
is we should
unfortunately,
wait.
it's devolved
We should wait
into
and see what the
that,
outcome
so
of this election is, because that's the
we
only
need
way
to
the
take
American people
advantage
get
of
to
that when we
express
can.
their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake?
It's not
here is
ideal,
the
but it's
president's
what
made
we
it
have.
clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that. He ran on that, and he has been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets.
I mean,
and
that's
that
not really a
ended
sex issue,
when we,
though,
in fact,
because if
passed the
men got
Affordable Care
pregnant,
Act.
they'd be under the same
And there's
thing.
100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before
one of the
this
fundamental
election.
things
If he
about the
wins
Affordable
election
Care Act
and the
is
Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait.
it strips away a lot. It's like the worst of both worlds.
As far as a say is
It
concerned,
keeps the
people already had
awful
their say.
insurance companies involved, but it strips away
Justice
public
Ginsburg
choice.
said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point,
That you can
10 years ago
opt
or
not
so,
to have health insurance.
she said a president
Socialists
and
don't
the
even like it
Senate
because it's
is
not even
elected for
like
a
it's not
period
even
of
a
time, but a
socialist
president's
bill either.
elected for 4 years.
It's basically
We're not elected for 3 years. I'm
government
not
meddling in
elected
an
for
already
3
broken
years.
healthcare system
So we have the
that-
Senate,
and
we have a
whenever the
president.
government
He's
meddles
elected
in
to the
something
next
like
During
usually
that
makes it more
period of
broken.
time, we have an
Yeah,
opening.
we have
I'm not
plenty of
elected for 3 years.
instances of
I'm
that.
elected for 4 years.
The
And the
election's
100
already
million
started.
people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number
White.
one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
The thing is, Joe Biden raised
That's not what your party is saying.
That is simply
Your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party
That is
wants to
simple.
go
He
socialist.
said that
My
he
party
wanted to
is me.
implement
Socialist
single
right
payer
now.
even
I
for
am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in
Okay,
fact,
someone needs to cut
approved
that part of him
what
saying
I
I'm the
approved of.
Democratic
Now,
Party.
here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way,
Yes, that would be an excellent
20,
clip.
the 200
You just
million, the 200,000
Photoshop
people that have died on his watch.
Emperor Palpatine onto
How many
his
of
thing.
those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk
we're
about.
And if you
Finally,
were here,
here's
it wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200. It would be 2 million people
Yes.
because you were very late on the draw. You didn't
This
want me
was
to ban
a
China,
hilarious
which was
debate.
heavily
It
infected.
was-
You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe,
which
which was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
Much later.
Mr.
You have
President,
talking about 2
very
million people.
blunt
You're not
New
president,
Yorker
you're a moderator.
and a senile.
we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go
But
ahead.
I'm not sure
Let
how
me
to describe
finish.
Joe
The
Biden.
point is
He
that the president also
pretends to be
is
a
opposed
redneck,
to
but
Roe v.
he's
Wade.
clearly not.
That's on the
because
ballot as well in the court.
he's been in the
court.
swamp for 50
And so
years,
that's
and he has
also at
a
stake
$9
right
million
now.
net
And so
worth.
the election is all
You
Is
didn't
ready
vote
to
on the
go.
ballot.
of the ones
Why is it
who
in the
said
ballot?
I'm woke
Because
Why
you
is it on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
that had
It's
stopped
on the
being
ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would
and you
just
don't
be
know
quiet?
I don't
her
remember.
view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
know
don't
her
know.
I
view.
wouldn't put it
Well, all
past
right,
him, though.
all right, let's talk.
He will read
We got a lot to
literally
unpack here,
anything that's
gentlemen. We got a
on
lot of time, so
At least he's way more entertaining. than
on
Clinton
health
was.
care, and then we'll come back to Roe v.
absolutely.
Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the
Especially,
Supreme Court will
he
hear
might be
a
even
case
worse than
a week
Jacob Zuma
after the
with
election,
numbers.
in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last
Because they
If
want to
I-
give
if I-
good
if
health
I-
care.
If I may ask
ahead.
my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well, I'll
I
give
got
you an
rid of
op-
the
I'm gonna-
individual
when I finish,
mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse
opportunity.
me. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part of
didn't ask,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part
me.
of Obama.
Let me ask my
Well,
question.
I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect.
not only
of
debating
Obama.
Biden, but he was also
Mr.
debating
President,
Wallace.
I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let
I
me
watched
ask my
this
question,
live,
and then
and I
you
was
can answer.
I was laughing
You,
my
in the
butt
course
off.
of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare. And just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the
pre-existing
things that
conditions?
we've done,
He has not cut
insulin. I
healthcare.
give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big.
you'll
This
be
is
happy,
big stuff.
sir. You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well, if I can
sorry.
ask you the question, it will
Not
end.
what your party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would
One of the
still
most
not
striking
be
things
in
about this
that
debate is
option.
that it
Number
shows
one.
that Joe Biden is
with Bernie
still stuck in
Sanders
his
and
I-
far
I-
left on the manifesto,
When
we
you-
call it.
when
And that
manifest-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
you
I'm
saying
not
you
going to
didn't
listen
agree?
to him. The fact of the
Like,
matter is,
what the
I beat
Democratic
Bernie
Party
Sanders.
wants is not
by much.
I beat him
a
a whole hell of a
Medicaid
lot. I'm here,
expansion.
I'm
They
here
want
standing facing the
universal
world.
health
Pocahontas
care.
would have left
Well,
2 days
I tell
early.
you,
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do is
Super
hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to
With
make
what?
sure, because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agreed.
want to
Hey,
make
wait,
sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has.
You'd be
you know,
surprised.
You pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy, the
Go
wrong
ahead,
night
Joe.
at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders.
The whole idea.
Let him.
There is no manifesto. Number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
You
two.
just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
You can tell
You
he's
agreed
clearly
with
on
Bernie
something.
Sanders on a plan.
It looks like he's on
Absolutely
ADHD.
agreed
Folks, do you
to,
have any
and under that
idea
plan,
what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Medicare.
Do you
Mr.
have any
President.
do?
Socialized
maybe
medicine.
Mr.
Well, I
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care because
Bernie?
because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two,
yeah.
there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give
Number
them better
three.
health care at a much lower price
But-
because
and by the way,
Obamacare
he doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't. Obamacare
Gentlemen, you
is
realize
no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's no
same
good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president. Go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better. And I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual
true.
mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
And I
known
just
for.
had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
Okay.
Premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it
what his
doesn't work.
people- that's
So
what his people
we
say.
do want to get rid of it.
It's
Chris,
an
we
open
want to get rid of it.
I
and
understand
give
it, sir,
something
but I
that's
have
cheaper
to
and
give
better.
you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the Vice President talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care. Of
course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right.
He's
I
against
have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel.
What a great non-answer.
Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
would you answer that
because
question?
the question is the question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
Gentlemen, I think
This
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the
unpresidential.
court.
That
We
is-
have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure do.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said,
Might that have something to do with the way the medical system codes COVID-19 deaths?
That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools that cost a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools that cost a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you...
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand.
Oh, yeah, it is absolutely is China's fault. They stopped domestic travel, but they left their international airports wide open.
Because you didn't think I should.
What they did was horrible.
Not to mention that when they didn't even tell anyone when the virus first appeared. They incompetently managed it, but they didn't tell anyone or warn anyone. So by the time we knew what was happening, like there wasn't really much we could do. They'd already spread because China refused to tell anyone because they didn't want to make themselves look bad.
Should have closed our country.
Wait a minute. It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
Lugan press.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
there was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was no one. We didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning?
And the big thing about that was they depleted the entire national face mask stockpile.
How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak
COVID
to
hit,
a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact...
There were next to no face masks in stock. They had about 30 million in 95 certified.
His own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
Johnson, Pfizer?
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions.
They're anti-vaxxers when it's convenient.
Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives.
God.
It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call it.
We have a new player in the
head of your
arena.
Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Smiley.
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them.
Oh,
and he
damn.
didn't say that. He said
we
it could
scared
be
them
there, but
off.
it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said
Dr.
it's a
Redfield.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking
after
about when it's
that.
generally available. not when
Well,
it'll
we're
be.
going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This
delivering
is the
the
same
vaccine.
man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away.
I think it's
By the
hilarious
warm
that
weather,
Joe
it'd be
Biden
gone.
is trying to
Miraculous,
fact
like a
check
miracle.
Trump live.
By the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically,
That was
you
him-
know that.
I-
That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight.
I would trust
Your
the
running mate,
president
Senator
more
Harris,
than
goes further,
Joe Biden
saying the
about
public health
knowing
experts,
the
quote,
timeline for
will
a
be
vaccine.
muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying
Everybody
you can't,
knows.
or Senator
And-
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No. You can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She
the
said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be
Yes.
suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists. There's thousands.
But not
of
if
scientists
Trump
out
is there. You
like
can't
here at this
trust
great
Trump
hospital
scientists.
that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by
I
the way,
spoke to the
and Fauci,
scientists that are in
and
charge.
By the way,
they will have
and
the vaccine very
does-
soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back
Joe
in
Biden
February,
actually did a lot
and he
worse than I
didn't
initially
even tell
thought.
you.
Like, watching
He's
this
on
again,
record
he looks like a
saying it.
dumbass.
He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So-
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
Epic.
If you would have
Cone.
had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had
That was the Chad
the
move.
charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
see,
and
he's
it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast. I look
Okay.
forward to talking
When it
about
comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi. And Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play
think
more than
about
I
it.
do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we
You
did a great
he
thing
just
by
admitted
shutting
he
it
shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute,
Let
Joe.
him
Let me
finish,
shut
sir.
you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country.
This
He just
is
went
very
through it.
true.
He had to,
This
'cause
is
we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found
pretty much
that elderly
indisputable. The
people with
Democratic
heart
Party
problems
wants
and
a
diabetes
national
and different
shutdown.
problems are very, very
And
vulnerable.
a
We
national
learned a lot.
mask
Young
mandate.
children aren't.
They
Younger
want
people
us to
aren't.
be
We've
like
learned a lot.
Australia,
But he
where
wants to shut
the
it
police
down.
are following
More
us around with
people will be
drones.
hurt by continuing. If you
And
look at
if we're
Pennsylvania,
more
if you
than
look at
5
certain
miles
states
from
that
home,
have
we get
been shut down,
arrested.
they have
And
Democrat
if we don't have a
governors
mask
all.
on,
One of the
we
reasons they
get
shut down is because
arrested.
they want to keep it
And
shut
if we
down
make a
until after the
Facebook
election
post about
on November 3rd.
being angry about the
Because it's a
restrictions, we get arrested for inciting a
but
riot.
those states,
That's
those
happened
states
multiple
are not
times in
doing
Australia.
well that are shut down
Which has
right
got to
now.
respond to that.
Once
President
they shut
Trump,
down the
you
whole
have
country.
begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are
of
okay.
masks?
You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rallies.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody
Joe,
wore masks,
you
and
said
social
multiple
distance between
times
now
you
and
want them to be
January,
shut
we'd
down.
probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also
It
said the
matters.
opposite. They've also said the opposite.
No serious person said the opposite.
They've
No
also said, well, look
serious
at
I wanna
Dr.
ask you-
Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the
He
opposite.
did not
I
say
wanna
What
ask
that.
you,
Joe
we got
Biden
very
is trying to
strong.
do is he's
Minute left in the
trying to
segment.
Are
larp
not
as
good.
a
Then he changed his
2014
mind. He said masks
Republican,
good.
and
I'm okay with masks.
it
I'm
comes
okay with
off
About one last subject.
so
because
fake.
Your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Outside.
Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
Because nobody will show up.
people with.
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You goes first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done a
worried
great
about it
job
spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
and
not worried
hangars, and
about
we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see
sir.
one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative
cheek to
effect.
jowl. No negative effect.
We've
Come
had
on.
no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000
All right.
people
You wanna
at these rallies.
Just
Yes.
quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on
Nobody
to the
cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week, you saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands,
what he's saying about the shutdown is true. Like,
but they
Revolver News did a study and found that
North Carolina, when you look
the
at
lockdowns
governors are under siege. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple
taken
of
away from more lives than
it's not fair.
they've saved.
We're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just wrong statement. Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so
no,
please let him
that's
have it.
because the shutdowns favor large businesses who can keep their business despite having vastly reduced customer service. And it's helped online stores, which tend to be larger companies, like Amazon and Jeff Bezos.
And when he became president,
they've gained an insane amount of market share since it started because they were the only businesses open.
People who have been on the front lines.
Quit lying,
Those people
Joe.
who have been saving our lives. Those people who have been out there dying. People who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, we are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
all right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When he took
gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President,
Joe, I want to be able to go dine in at Chick-fil-A, but I can't because of people like you.
Your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, There was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid
returns.
$38 million one year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page
Who really
or so
wants to
report
pay
that says everything I have,
millions
every
of
bank I
dollars
have,
in
I'm
taxes?
totally under-leveraged because the assets
I
are
commend
extremely
Trump
good,
for having
and we
excellent
have a
accountants
very
that managed to get his
I built a
tax
great
bill
company.
down to
Specific question,
$750.
which is-
But let me tell you,
Because paying
understand all of that.
taxes
I
sucks.
understand all of that.
But
I'm
let me-
no, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to
when?
see it. But let me just
Inshallah?
tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were a
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan.
And people think that these are
if you were to be elected president,
Joe
focuses
Biden
a lot
is
on big
pulling
government,
the
big
president.
taxes, big spending.
just
I want to focus
not
first
an
on
argument.
the taxes.
These aren't
you
arguments.
propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what as the analysis done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make, this federal government spends $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was
right.
your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed
The economy is
Mr.
busted.
President,
Let me finish.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But let me.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. if you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
booming.
Blew it. It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact,
and you know how you got through that recession? You printed $5.5 trillion.
Because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of
not
my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry.
All right, let him back.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having that.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with Mexico.
ate your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true.
Let him answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
It is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
with no
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And the
media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this, Joe.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
The people
he got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd
honorably.
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me. Hey,
let me just say you.
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already...
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such a...
Mr. President.
Every single one of them lost
This
a
is not about my family or his family. It's about your family. The American people. He doesn't... That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people.
He doesn't want to talk about it because he knows...
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
question. Try to be honest.
He stood up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
that is absolutely
you know what,
not true.
You're going to have
true,
gentlemen. I hate to.
Let's all start talking about random shit.
Why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal. We have.
It had nothing to do with the question either. What was that? What? Like, they were all talking at the same time about something that hadn't even been brought up by the moderator. I was so lost about what was happening.
Yeah, this debate was a train wreck.
It was glorious. I think all our debates should be this way.
Yes, it should be. It should be two alpha male Chads, one of them senile, one of them still assertive, just going at it. And you know what? Let's set up a boxing ring in the middle of this stage, and let's see Joe Biden try to knock out President Trump and start a fight.
You know, actually, given how little people actually care about these debates anyway, how about we should just replace the debates with some kind of sport, just a boxing match. It would be just as productive and way more entertaining.
Yes, it would be. And we'd finally get to see how Joe Biden took out Corn Pop.
And you know all those complaints about how it's all a bunch of old white people in government. Well, in this case, it would, the old would be at a disadvantage in the debates. I mean, in the boxing match. So maybe we'd get some young people.
Yeah, let's. Yes, I think this is a policy proposal we need to put forth.
Or we could just get rid of the moderator and replace him with a game show host.
Yes, Steve Harvey. That would be entertaining.
Or,
that would fit right in with all of this.
We should. How about Steve Harvey and Kanye West co-host the presidential debates?
Yes.
And they run it like a wacky Nickelodeon game show.
Yes, exactly. I think that would be the most watched television special in American history. I mean, you got some of the biggest names in pop culture there.
And you do it all outside, and so you can do it at a big park. So you start out with the barbecue, then you move into maybe this part, then you let them take it out. Wait, no, hold on. First, you let them take it out on each other with boxing, and then when they're too tired from boxing to continue, let them have a water fight.
Let's break out the super soakers.
Throw them in the pool, give them some water guns.
Exactly. That's the kind of intellectually stimulating content that America needs.
And it would be way more entertaining and watched than the debates, and it would.
Oh yes.
And it would be just as influential on people's votes. Because I don't think anyone decides how to vote based on the presidential debates.
Yeah, in a long lost world, we decided things that way, but nowadays it's just based on who tweets the best, and I think Trump wins that contest hands down. I mean, who else tweets the way Trump does?
It's like, if we're not going to actually reform the country to get any better, let's just embrace the nonsense. Let's make Kanye West and and Donald Trump the co-dictators of America. All of our political debates will be settled through Nickelodeon game shows.
Yes.
We will change our national anthem to either Hail Columbia or the theme song to Team America World Police. We'll implement the entire Rhinoceros Party platform.
Yes.
I mean, let's do it.
And then that's how we end up with President Dr. Mountain Dew Camacho.
We're
in clown world. We may as well embrace
I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. we're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country...
Oh, but did the moderator just give up on trying to moderate the content of the debates?
Yes, it's that bad.
I'm gonna, we're scheduled to do this, but just do whatever you want as long as you don't interrupt anyone.
would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting
Well, that's
than he
all right,
has.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people
This is like a
on both
bad
sides,
parent-teacher
was what
conference.
directly
But
led you...
the parents are gone, and they're just trying to keep the unruly twins from fighting.
to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black...
Okay, as part of the new presidential debates, we should include a beauty pageant where we have the candidates line up in swimsuits. I mean, that part might make people a bit uncomfortable, but...
Black Americans...
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to see
except
Donald Trump's or Joe Biden's physique. No one wants to see that. That's how you get people canceling their cable subscriptions.
Well, we do this right at the beginning of the boxing match. You have them line up.
Oh yes, you have them weigh in, yeah.
and they get to show off whatever poses they want, and then they get to beat the crap out of each other.
You're right.
We're gonna make the founding. We're gonna make the founding fathers proud.
Who have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people looked like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is whose
now, second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all.
Mr. Floyd?
This man's done.
You mean the dude who passed a fake $20 bill and then overdosed on fentanyl while the cops were arresting him? That dude?
Disastrous for the African American community.
So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994. where you call them super predators. African Americans are super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir. It's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they
the
occur,
reality
when they
about
find them,
this is that it's the exact opposite of what Joe Biden is saying.
They have to be held accountable.
It's not anti-black racism, it's anti-white racism.
Together, an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out. So
I apologize if I'm making your stream for class unwatchable.
When these things happen.
No, the stream isn't for class. I just thought I'd stream my reaction to the debate. The actual class project is I have to answer some questions about the debate. I just thought, since I was going to get popcorn for the debate anyway, I figured I'd stream my reaction.
These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of a town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place, and you say peaceful protest? No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were
It's not racial sensitivity training.
Insane.
It's critical race theory.
It was a radical
Those are two very
revolution
different
that was
things.
taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing
I'm Joe Biden,
if we do
and I'm an Irish Catholic from Pennsylvania, from Scranton.
Racism
Vice
in America.
President.
He technically, he qualifies for both of those on technicality only. I don't think anyone thinks of Biden as an Irishman. No one thinks of Biden as an Irishman. And he's a horrible Catholic, so...
Oh my God, absolutely. He is not a...
he's such a...
Let's just say that... You continue.
He's such a horrible Catholic, he got denied communion, and almost no one ever gets denied communion anymore. You have...
Yeah.
Also, while there is some anti-Catholic bias in America, I've never heard of any anti-Irish bias in several decades.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but
Lord.
the reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in
and a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go
Yes,
ahead,
I'm
say
in
it.
favor.
You
Everybody's
asked a
in favor
question,
of
let him finish.
Law and order.
Law and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%.
Just a little bit of order, not
our administration.
full law and
It's
order.
gone up on his
just a little bit.
Only
for Republicans.
All right, we're now. Mr. President, you're going to
of America.
Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer, particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact, there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where you can bring in a couple of
Dropped the mouse.
examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died. Shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200% crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. done, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
would
seen
know a
before.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
I was
better.
raised.
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was
So much
raised
better
in the
than-
suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and/or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past.
Yeah, but
Integrated? Is this 1970?
well, the thing about dog whistles is whether, for one thing, they're by nature unfalsifiable and unverifiable because, like, by definition, they're supposed to be subtle and unrecognizable. But, like, saying that they don't work anymore, that implies that he's aiming them at suburbans, and that, like, no one recognizes dog whistles except the people they're aimed at and the people who are obsessed with looking for dog whistles even when there's no basis for it. Like, the whole point of a dog whistle is you don't notice it unless you're part of the target. So I don't know what his point about bringing
Yeah.
up dog whistles in relation to suburbia is.
Past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to
just
deal
wants
with
to call the
COVID. They're
suburbs
dying in the
racist.
suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the
Okay, I don't know much about the other stuff, but burning out has nothing to do with the federal policy. It has everything to do with the fact that people live in California.
Oh, and the worst part is that it's actually state policy that makes that worse. In most parts of the country that are heavily wooded, they have the State Department of Wildlife go in and cut down dead trees, haul them off, and do controlled burns. California doesn't do that. That's why it goes up like a tinderbox all the time, because all the hippy-dippy liberals in the California Assembly, they're like, if we do controlled burns, then all the animals will die and all the squirrels will have crying fits because we burned down their habitats.
I saw an image where they like, it was this map of where all the fires are, and they showed how it base stops at Canada. It's like made some quip about the fires not having license to leave the country or something, like they didn't have a border pass or something. Like, it is interesting that it stops as soon as you get to Canada.
Well, Canada does a much better job of managing their natural resources than the liberal states do. I will give them credit.
But anyway, but the point is, federal policy doesn't cause wildfires. People living in California is what causes their homes to burn down. And I kind of feel the same way about people who live in Florida or the Midwest. If you're going to live somewhere where there are natural disasters all the time, sure, you can remind us of that. And it's tragic when it happens, but don't act like it's our fault when a natural disaster happens in a place known for natural disasters.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't be surprised that there are hurricanes in Florida, hurricanes in Texas, tornadoes in Kansas and Nebraska, and wildfires in California. It's just
we
a
had
fact of life.
but like, I remember living in Kansas, and every year there was a tornado siren. That's just what you have to deal with when you live there. You don't get to say that it's someone else's fault when you knew the risks when you moved there.
Biden, Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. Yeah. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means...
let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law
Would you
support.
look?
He has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you.
This is true. When the riots were breaking out,
We don't have time
the
to do
BLM
it.
people
All
were
right.
saying, we're not
Name
about
one
community-led
law enforcement
policing.
group
We
that
want to
came out and
completely
Gentlemen,
defund
I'm gonna
it. We
take
don't
back
want the
moderator's
police.
I don't think
role,
they
We
were.
want to
and I
go
wanna
on a
get
rampage.
to another subject, which is the issue of protest.
This is kind of not entirely related, but the defund police movement. Okay, I haven't actually looked at their precise proposals, but it seems obvious to me that if you take money away from the police, you're going to reduce police quality, which is going to increase the amount of police incidents. Like,
Well,
has
it's not even that.
it's a well-known
It's they,
it's a
yeah,
well-known
they might.
problem that policemen are not paid enough and they are not respected. So there is very little to draw people in, other than doing it out of the just the kindness of their hearts or something. I was there's this soldier that well, he's not as active now, but we used to talk online sometimes, where he was talking about he doesn't want to be a policeman because it doesn't pay much and there's no respect for it. Whereas in the military, you at least have some uh, a measure of respect that comes with it. But being a policeman, like there's no gain to it. You'd only be qualified people would only go into the police force because they want to help people. And like my dad talked about there in Independence, where I used to live, that there were corrupt policemen there who would steal weed from people when they were also they would steal weed out of the evidence locker, sell it to people. That this happens all the time. There are underpaid corrupt policemen everywhere, and you don't fix that by defunding the institution. You fix that by reforming the police, by giving them the money to reform and by instituting strict standards, not by cutting their budgets. That doesn't
Well,
solve anything.
here's where I think they're going with this. I think that the BLM people, especially at the top of the organization, want to phase out the traditional policing structure because many policemen are nominally conservative, and it's one of the few organizations that hasn't been paused by liberalism. So when they want to abolish it because they want to replace it with NKVD style struggle sessions, so that they can go after the people who aren't on board with the PC agenda, with the critical race theory and the like.
Now,
instead of actually enforcing the law fairly as it's written in accordance with the Constitution.
now to get a little bit more LARPy in sharing my ideas, I think it's Switzerland where they don't have a mandatory draft. They do have all able-bodied men have to serve a certain amount of time in the militia. And technically in the United States, all able-bodied men from 18 to 45 are part of the militia. It's just the unorganized militia, so it basically is meaningless. But what we should do is have all able-bodied men from 18 to 45 be in the militia and have that actually mean something and require at least a certain amount of time on active duty. And while I'm not suggesting that we replace the police force, have a degree of policing that is done by sort of randomly selected militiamen, similar to jury duty. That's how the Watchman system used to work before the French.
I agree.
Have a citizen militia, and you randomly select people from that militia to do the like low-level police work in their local communities. That would not only make it more, quote unquote fair by, giving everyone a chance at it so that you don't have it dominated by problematic people. And it would give everyone experience with what it's actually like to be a policeman so that people can make more informed decisions about how to fix the police system when it is broken.
Yeah, I think that would be a good proposal because it's like Neighborhood Watch but with more teeth.
Also,
and you have less of the corruption that's endemic to more lower level policing.
Also, having a militia where everyone is part of it would, if everyone knew self-defense and how to use weapons and so on, it would make everyone a lot more prepared for when something happens. They would, people would know how to defend themselves. They would be less scared of guns and more able to actually deal with problems. I don't want to go on a tangent on that, but I'm a big fan of the idea of a citizen militia.
Oh, I absolutely am too. I think not only should people like Kyle Rittenhouse be exonerated, I think they should also have legal teeth behind their actions. I think people should have the ability to protect their community and even protect the community that they work in if they're commuting. I think that's just natural because they have a stake in what goes on around them. They should be able to protect it.
And from what little, I haven't actually done in-depth research, so I may be misinterpreting it, but from as far as I can tell, the intent of the founders behind things like the Second Amendment, it's oversimplistic to say that they wanted the people to be able to rebel. It's more accurate to say that they wanted the states to have a citizen militia that would be sort of a check on the federal standing army, so that if specifically the federal government, but the principle would apply to state governments as well. But if specifically if the federal government decided that they wanted to start implementing something and the people really, really didn't like it, like it was just something horrible, the states would have recourse in this citizen militia, not just their armies, but in a militia that could be able to say, no, we don't want to do that. And it would be a deterrent so that basically the federal government would have to cause a civil war if they wanted to enforce a radically unpopular thing. And a similar principle can apply lower, that if the state is dependent upon a citizen militia to enforce its laws, or at least has to deal with it in enforcing its laws, it reduces the chance of a government that needs to be overthrown by revolution, because they will be too aware of the fact that the people is ready to basically it forces the state to be aware of what the people actually want, and it reduces the need for revolution.
That have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree, you talk about peaceful protests, many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you'd stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president.
That's a great subtitle.
I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence...
What's a great subtitle?
The subtitle said Mayor of Berlin.
Vice President. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call and bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Oh,
really?
Here's the thing.
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, You know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the But here's the point.
Go
The
ahead,
point
sir.
is that that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly,
And-
every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
Well, wait,
criticized.
I have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement.
repeatedly.
Wait,
you have
just one
No,
second.
you've been talking
You
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to
you know,
end it.
sir.
I would love to end it, and
You
we
know, if
would
you want to
very-
switch seats,
We would
could
very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd
I'm
send
no,
in the National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
but they
good.
don't want to.
If he said that to me, if you want to switch seats, I would have taken him up on the offer. I would have said, "All right, let's do it," and that would have been
Yes, that would
entertaining
have been
television.
awesome. Yes, new moderator.
Accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you
If
saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want
This
to
is
call
the
him?
line.
What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists
Who
and
would
white
you like me to condemn?
White
Proud Boys.
supremacists and right-wing
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His own
This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the threat
left-wing
of
problem.
white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea.
That's the
not an
line, as they've
organization.
been
got it.
clobbering him
That's what
nonstop
It's an
since
idea.
then over it.
His
Okay.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna-
you know what?
No,
He's
no, we're
wrong.
done, we're done, sir.
Absolutely.
We're moving on to the next.
Everybody
We're
When
gives
a
you
bat
advice
hits
in
you
your
over the head, that's
administration.
not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are.
Antifa is a dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you're-
Well, Antifa is obviously more than an idea. That's a bit like saying, I can't think of a good analogy for it, but like it may not be an organization, but it's more than an idea. Like, it's not just a movement. It's like, and even if there's no structure to it, it's not exactly an idea. Like, there is organization of people doing things, and there are leaders in the movement. It's like, and even if it is an idea, I don't see how that, like, that's like saying the Boston Tea Party was done by freedom people, like, and that was an idea. Like, yeah, sure, it was an idea, but it was an idea as part of a movement that actually accomplished things and organized things.
Better be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When
in
a
2
president,
seconds.
I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because
Also, I just realized the irony of Biden complaining about anti-Catholic discrimination when the nominated justice is a Catholic, that if she gets appointed, it will be a majority Catholic court.
President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes on.
Okay, he didn't actually say much, but see, the thing is that he's the reason I think that was an effective point is because of how much the Supreme Court is prioritized. It's basically saying, if you like the Supreme Court justices I appoint, and if you like the legal theory of the judges I appoint, I appointed a lot of judges, which the way he said it sounds kind of empty, but it's important because the Supreme Court justices are arguably the most important part of any presidency.
Oh, absolutely. The judiciary as a whole is very important because, unfortunately, the judicial branch is the supreme branch of the government. And by choosing who is on that, the Supreme Court, the federal courts, the appeals courts, that really shapes the future of our country because they're there for life. And he will have a very serious effect on the judicial history of the country for the next 50 years at least, with all the appointments he's added.
And see, so from what I've seen, the court was kind of, I'm not really sure what the court was like at first, but it was sort of minimalist until like around the Roosevelt era, and at that point it went left wing. Roosevelt got a bunch of his justices on. People like him. Basically, it was left wing for decades. Then in the 90s, with the Bushes, the first Bush, and then later on in the 2000s with the second Bush, it started going to the right, and so it's been centrist for a decade or two now. Well, I guess a couple of decades now. It's been sort of centrist, with Roberts being the deciding vote in a lot of things. And now with Trump appointing his justices, it's moving to the right. So we're going to see for the first time what a modern right-wing court looks like, and what they will actually be able to do, because we haven't really had much of an aggressive right-wing court for a long, long time.
And I'm excited for that because we frankly need to roll back a lot of the things that have been done in this country.
And some things that have been done under the centrist court are things like ruling that yes, there is a personal right to own a handgun, ruling that yes, your smartphone is protected by the Fourth Amendment, things like that. That there have been some utterly ridiculous cases, like ruling that
Persia fell.
Like
That was a bad one.
like ruling that states are obligated to recognize gay marriages because it's somehow protected by the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Ruling that the recent one, that one of Trump's appointees actually supported because of a hypertextualist reading that was stupid. It was saying that the Civil Rights Act applies to discrimination against
Oh yeah,
homosexuals.
Gorsuch effed up on that one.
Like
That
that's not.
was awful.
See, this is why I don't call myself a textualist per se, because you get stupidity like that. It's
Yeah.
obviously not intended to prevent discrimination against homosexuals, whether or not there should be such a law. There isn't one. That is not the intent of it. It's utterly ridiculous to read it that way.
Yes. And moreover, here's my commentary on Trump's picks so far. I think Gorsuch was kind of a center-right pick, but I think Kavanaugh and I think Amy Coney Barrett will also be more hard, I wouldn't say hard right, but solidly conservative picks. They've both been very good on immigration, gun rights, to a certain extent, social issues.
I looked a bit into Kavanaugh and Gorsuch when they were first appointed, but that was a while back, so I don't remember much about them. But I'm definitely excited for Barrett. She's basically a Scalia protege. She
Yes.
is
Yeah.
and she's actually an Orthodox Catholic, so she would actually rule properly on things like abortion, and so on, and not read
Yeah.
the Constitution in a broken way.
Yeah. My only beef with her is that she ruled in support of a lockdown order, but otherwise, she's a great pick. I mean, since it's politically obligated that the pick has to be a woman, I think that this is the best possible pick we could get.
Also, to me, it's ironic that the 14th Amendment, they ruled that it protects abortion under the Rights and Privileges Clause, ignoring the fact that under the Equal Protection Clause, like, you could make an argument that the 14th Amendment actually requires abortion to be illegal, since by having a double standard, you are discriminating against the equal protection of unborn. Like, that's not necessarily a definite reading. There, you can make an argument about it, but it's ironic that they took an amendment that can be read as support as uh as supporting unborn rights and turned it into somehow the saying that you have a right to an abortion and the government can't interfere, which is a very
Well, they're thinking about that is that a fetus does not have any rights whatsoever until it is out of the womb and its umbilical cord has been cut.
yeah. I'm aware
And
that
yeah,
I'm
but
aware of the
before
decision.
then, yeah.
Although it was a 7-2 decision, and one of the only two dissenters was also the only Democratic appointee. All
Well, the
seven.
Democratic Party used to be actually pretty good on the issues. Like before the FDRs and the Kennedys started streaming in, the Democratic Party was actually pretty good on a lot of issues. And it used to be that the Republican Party was the liberal party. Again, I am a conservative, not a Republican, if that makes sense.
And I would call myself a Western conservative, not necessarily an American conservative, because but it's generally the same thing. But yeah, the Republican Party, a lot of times, even today, I'm disgusted by both parties. And the Republican Party
Yeah,
also,
they're both awful.
one thing that I dislike about the Republican Party is that they have basically the same opinion of states' rights as the Democrats do, which is states have rights when they do what we want. They don't have rights when they don't do what we want.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the case, but we're getting to a weird spot in our country where I think the only solution to it right now is some form of balkanization or armed conflict, because no one is really honoring the rule of law or the Constitution anymore. It's turning into a political tool that both sides want to use.
Um, Also, although on the issue of states' rights, I think there is a problem that some states are too big, like California. It's bad enough that the people where I live have to live under the thumb of Los Angeles, but the fact that we also live under the thumb of Sacramento, or, well, I'm not sure but like the fact that that Northern and Southern California are under one government is really odd. I don't like people here, like, we're not the same thing as Northern California. They're two very different cultures and places. Why are we under one state government? like there's a reason we're the most populous state in the country. I think at least one of the most.
Yes,
It's
yes, you
because
are by far the
because we have too
largest.
many people here and we're too big.
Yes, I would
Uh,
agree. And Reagan, I hate to say this, but Reagan destroyed California. The 86 amnesty was a huge mistake.
um, and I know a lot less about the eastern states, but from what I have heard, just make the New York metropolitan area its own state and let the rest of New York go free. New York
I
could be
think
its
that they
own
would like that.
country. Like, I mean, it's just
Yeah, yeah. I lived in Texas, and there were more people probably in Harris County alone than there are in the entire state of Kansas.
oh the let me actually look up what the population of Kansas is.
It's about 2.9 million.
Well, I'm pretty sure Los Angeles alone has more than that.
Yeah.
Let alone the metro area. Uh, the cities where I live, I think both together. Well, I don't live in a city, but the two cities near me have about 300,000 combined. Yeah, it's about almost 3 million. The region where I live, I can't remember. It was like a few 100,000, which is bigger than the entirety of Montgomery County. Which
Oh yeah, Montgomery County isn't even like a small county by Kansas standards.
um
It's reasonably populated.
yeah, it's like what 50,
It's about
30,000.
it's about 40,000 people.
All right. And Independence is like 8,000 something and shrinking,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons I
Oh,
want to move back
I
there.
think I think that's going to reverse though, because I think people are starting to flee cities. Like I noticed this a little bit over the past few years. I know several people in our town who have moved in from the East Coast. Like my scoutmaster, he's from Boston. My orchestra teacher, she was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not Kansas. And a few other examples, but
And a lot of the people fleeing California,
that's yeah.
a lot of people fleeing California go to places like New York and, I mean, New Mexico and Colorado, but they're going all over the place. But there are a lot of people leaving California. A lot of people hate California and want to get out of
Oh,
California.
oh,
The problem,
yeah.
the problem is half of them just turned the new place into a new California. But
Oh, yeah.
um,
I know I have family members who live in Colorado, and they're saying that in suburban Greeley, people are taking dumps on the street because the police have decriminalized it. Because
nice.
guess who has moved in? Californians. Californians are a plague among our states. And I think, honestly, any person who is in a state that's having an influx of Californians who's running for a Republican seat, they would win hands down if they said, I'm going to stop Californians from coming to our state. They would win. They would win hands down because people hate Californians,
Yeah, but
even like other Californians do.
and then I guess then I mean, they obviously couldn't do that because of the free movement clause, but yeah, that
Well,
would probably be a popular policy.
They could do soft policies.
Um, See, one of the big things that we have here is housing. Basically, it's well, I'm sure there are many, many issues, but one of the big things is housing is stupidly expensive. I tried to find a place, cheap place to rent. Cheapest places I could find were around $1,000 a month, or like over that. And one of the cheapest places was like maybe around 1,000, a little under, and it wasn't even an apartment. It was just a room in someone's house. The any
Do you,
apartment you want to rent is going to be over $1,000 a month, and that's my area, not even Los Angeles. This is just Los Angeles
do,
County. It's
do you want to
insane.
know how much my sister pays for her townhouse, which
Probably
has
not.
3 bedrooms, a basement, and it's very close to my university?
This is gonna pain me, but yes, I want to know.
$430 a month.
Ah! Oh,
Do you want to
uh,
know how much a 2,500 square feet house on 5 acres, um, with ready access to gigabit internet, and it's in a good neighborhood, is in Independence?
ugh. Probably enough for me to live in for a few months.
200 grand. And that's like the nicest neighborhood in town. You can get a house for 30 grand in Indy.
And I'm sure rent is pretty dirt cheap compared to out
It's
here.
it's not bad. It's entirely doable for most people, like even working service job.
Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and the minimum wage. It's the minimum wage is going up to $15 an hour here. So that's 300 a week. So yeah, about 1,200 a month is your like that's so if you work 20 hours a week at $15 an hour, you get 1,200 a month, and 1,000 of that or more goes to rent. Oh,
Yep.
it's so broken.
You have to just buy top ramen and track phone minutes and the Spectrum 10 meg plan. That's your entertainment, and then the rest
Fortunately,
you
I live with my. If my parents kicked me out, I would move to Kansas immediately. That would be my first move. I would go. Okay, nope, I'm just getting out of here. I am not staying in this crap hole any longer. I am leaving. I'm done. I'm not dealing with it. Uh, they're also letting since I'm taking 15, 16 credit hours in college. I'm not getting a job till after this semester, and then I'll work for the rest of it. But fortunately, I have a place to live and not pay rent. Because if I didn't, I would not be living in California anymore. Because
yeah I
especially with the pandemic thing and all of the stuff that's happening with that, it's no, no, I cannot take California anymore. It pains me that I have to stay here another 2 years, but well, actually, not quite 2 years, about a year and a half, or maybe a bit over. I'm probably leaving after summer of 2022, but it pains me that I have to stay even that long. I
yeah
hate it.
I feel bad for you. California is falling apart
Now again,
very quickly.
I'm not subject to most of the nonsense because I live in an unincorporated area, not near a city. It's actually like that part is okay. We don't, most of the stuff doesn't affect us, but it's still very inconvenient because like it's not like a small town where I can do anything. And again, trying to get a job or pay rent, housing is still expensive here. It's just that we live in a place where the regulations and such don't impact daily life. But if trying to get housing or is a pain, and I'm sure that well, jobs probably suck as much as anywhere else, but it's just horrible. And so, not only is it difficult, also basically, in order to function at all, you have to have a car. Like if you want to get from anywhere, you have to have a car because even relatively small towns are several miles across. Well, I say more like something like 20 miles across, I think. Uh, and but the public transportation sucks. because it's not New York or Los Angeles. It's I don't think it's a suburb of Los Angeles, but it's a the public transportation sucks, so you have to have a car. Except that on top of housing, like who can afford the insurance?
See if you can get a
minutes
an
uninterrupted.
older Buick
Under this president, we become
with like a 3800 V6. Those tend to be very inexpensive, and you can also service them easily, and they're typically very reliable.
Now, eventually, again, I mean, see, one of the reasons I want to move back to independence is that I like small towns where I can walk places, and so once I get
But
certified,
you're still going to need a car.
yeah, I know, but I'm not going to have to use it as much. But once, like basically, I would only need a car if I had to be somewhere immediately, or if I were going to another town, because I'm willing to walk for half an hour or an hour. Well, maybe I wouldn't be, depending on the weather, but I'd have to walk. I mean, I'd have to use a car a lot less, and things would be so much closer, and I wouldn't have to drive for 20 minutes just to get to the next block. But and so once I'm certified where I have a job, certified in a job where I can make money there, I'm moving back.
President, as opposed to President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head to head.
Technically, the virus caused a recession, and even if you had a stimulus check for everyone, that's just kind of delaying the. Like, for one thing, I don't think that would have stopped a recession. It just would have kept people from suffering all of the consequences. But it would have, like, all that would do is just shove a bunch of debt into the future. It wouldn't have stopped a recession.
Ahead with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
Can you add back I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you add back 30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
You may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
He made a fortune.
My son.
And he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been
totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about
not true.
Gentlemen,
that report is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame...
I did just realize that one of the positive effects of the fires is probably going to be people leaving California.
Blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President. You said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. We're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting for a lot of people.
You believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. In Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because...
You probably heard one of the reasons we lost power here in California a while back was because they had to shut down the power lines because they were afraid it would cause a fire with all the wind. So instead of just cutting the trees away from the power lines, they cut our power.
Yep, that's clown world leadership right there.
Why? If you're afraid the power lines are going to cause a fire, just cut the trees back. You don't put flammable material near power lines.
Jesse, you don't understand. The people who run your state they don't govern by logic or reason. They govern based on their emotions and what they feel is just.
Also, interacting with
your state is run by SJWs. And communists.
Interacting with the real world has reignited my hatred of normies. In fact, it's given me an appreciation for what people mean when they talk about hating normies. Yes. Because I kind of underestimated the amount of oversimplification and lack of critical thinking, or critical thinking is maybe not quite what I'm trying to say, but like the lack of acknowledging that there is another side that has a different point of view that exists among normies. Like in my political science class, one of the recent classes, he basically lost control and it kind of had to end the lecture early because the chat was just full of people talking over each other about how horrible the racism has gotten with the and the lack of social justice. Like, whatever your opinion is, you shouldn't you shouldn't drown out a lecture. I mean, well, not so much drown out a lecture, but you shouldn't start talking over each other and delay a lecture because you're so upset about how racist everything is and how there's no way to fix it but a revolution.
Sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars and trucks?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored
No, but you would take a lot of
rollback.
cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And and I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Right. Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations in all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion.
Look,
that's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we're
not
going to
the case.
All right, let me
destroy our
because I
country.
actually wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
Let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that. That's at all.
He did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. But the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is
not
not my plan.
That's
the Green New
you want to
Deal
rebuild every
is
building.
not my plan.
I want to rebuild every.
If he knew anything about,
he made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did is he
You're done in
said
this segment.
he called the military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and
did
he said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid bastards.
Please,
He said it.
Stop.
I would never say
would
that.
Play
to the
it.
military.
Play it.
Go ahead. Mr.
You're on
Vice
tape.
President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're
support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Oh, you don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
that means you just lost the
No.
radical left.
I support
you
the
don't.
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. Election.
One of the things that drives up housing costs is when they do things like, I don't remember if it's implemented yet, but all of the housing regulations, and one of the at least proposed, maybe it's implemented in the future, I don't remember, is like requiring solar panels on all new housing, which sounds like a good idea until you realize that whoever builds the house has to pay for that, which means they have to charge more for the house, which means housing prices go up. Property taxes cause this, various regulations cause it. It's just building a house is it's so difficult to build a house that the housing is just insanely expensive. And then when someone tries to do something like the tiny houses to temporarily alleviate the homeless problem by building homeless people boxes to like proper, tiny houses to live in, the city comes in and says, sorry, you can't do that. That's a public nuisance. And says, sorry, you have to stop this. We're working on our homeless plan. We promise it'll be done in a few years this time. I know we keep saying that, and it's been decades, and we keep saying we'll fix it next year. But this time, you got to trust us that it'll work this time.
Integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting, because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way.
No, don't vote. Why would you encourage people to vote early? Why?
Vote early and often.
Mail-in ballots are their own thing, but voting early is retarded unless you're in somewhere like India where you just out of necessity have to. Voting early means you have less of the facts leading up to it, and it also encourages the government to maintain early voting measures, and early voting measures open the door for more abuse. Even if there's no evidence of abuse, even having the possibility of a potential abuse in the future is a bad thing. And voting early serves no purpose.
Yeah, and you could absolutely handle voting during a pandemic. In-person voting. You just have everyone hand in their ballots from their cars, and you do ID checks that way, and then you disinfect everything.
This would be very difficult to do in a way that you could prevent fraud. But if you could figure out a way to have credible mobile voting centers, which again, there are a lot of issues with making sure that that's not abused. If you could do it that way, that would be another solution. But yeah, a better solution would probably be, if you have a car, you can do that. If you don't have a car, we'll figure something out. But the point is, voting early has no purpose and it has drawbacks. So why would you tell people to vote early? Like, what is the advantage to voting early?
Fraud way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the vote,
in Britain, they're so afraid of people messing with the votes that not only do they not have electronic voting and make fun of us for having electronic voting, they don't even use pens. They use pencils because they're afraid that someone might replace the ink in the pens with disappearing ink. So they use pencils instead, so that just in case, because they're so afraid of, what if someone finds a way to cheat in this election?
Votes are counted and they're all counted. That will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter. Because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen.
Okay. Unironically, I don't want it to happen, but part of me wants Trump to lose and then refuse to give up his power just because it would be entertaining to see, like if he said, all right, military, let's keep me in power. Just, to know what would happen.
I think that would legitimately cause a civil war. I think some people would support him. I know I would. I would rather have Trump in power than Biden.
Again, I don't want that to happen, but I kind of do. Just because it would, It would be so ridiculous.
It would be an amazing completion of 2020.
Yes, it
We
would. It
went
would
from
be.
we went from a normal, stable first world country to a war zone, a pandemic-ridden, burning, killer bee-ridden war zone.
What was that? Oh, what was that other thing that happened just recently? I remember now, but I know that just oh yeah, the Supreme Court justice dying and causing a bunch of nonsense and just everything happening at once. It is being beautiful, and I eagerly await the alien invasion coming to top it off. But yeah, if okay, the best way it could happen is if say something like Trump wins the electoral votes he needs, but the electors switch sides, or vice versa. Well, no, like no, let's say Trump wins all of the electoral votes he needs, but the elect enough electors decide to switch their votes, and Biden gets elected instead. So Trump rejects the results and tells the military to keep him in power, and it causes a civil war. Like that would be so entertaining.
It would be. It would be very entertaining.
I mean, I'd also be moving to whatever country would take me to, so I could stay out of it. But it would be so entertaining.
Yes.
So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? Or you get 4 more years of these lies.
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what
They
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about
left
it?
and
There are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do
What are
is you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's
I'm not-
okay,
I know
or
your
you go and
complaint.
vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go
have
and vote. You go and
No,
vote
but
like
what I'm
they
saying is, what are
like
you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people?
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country.
There is no.
This is not.
There is no.
This is not
evidence
going
of
to
that.
end well.
There is
Okay.
no
This
evidence
is
of that.
not going
Vice
to
President
end well.
Biden-
5 states
In fact,
have had
go ahead,
mail-in
sir.
ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What we're saying is, they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because he
You're
knows
wrong.
the outcome.
You're wrong.
No, I want to continue with you on
I
this,
love
Vice
counting the
President
votes.
Biden. Because
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me, Vice President Biden. The biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me.
Please no. Doesn't that defeat the point of anonymous voting, though? So we won't count your ballot unless you acknowledge who you voted for.
Yeah.
Yikes!
Because when you have 80 million ballots,
gentlemen, I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system,
you
know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already
All
there's
right,
been
so
fraud.
now
mail service delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. In the
185
final
million
question
pieces of
is,
mail a day.
in 8
ballots.
states, we can keep talking.
In
8 states,
disgrace.
election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks.
Could be months.
Until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President.
Okay, I just realized. Oh wait, no, never mind. What I thought of wouldn't work.
Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that
from
mean,
a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted? And will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
I asked you had an opportunity to respond.
Go
ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
Vice President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night.
So I think when they came up with the vice presidential debates, they thought, you know what, the presidential debates aren't pointless enough. How can we think of the most inconsequential television possible? Because who cares about the vice presidential debates?
We hope you watch.
Well,
Until
to
then,
be fair,
thank you.
Kamala Harris will
and
be
good
running
night.
the country.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that wasn't. See, with all the hype, I was hoping for something a little bit more entertaining, but I guess it was worth it. It was just, not quite as chaotic as I was hoping.
Yeah, it was absolutely stupid. Although I think Trump came out on top of that one.
That was. Oh my. Definitely the most entertaining debate. Well, I haven't watched many debates, but I've watched a bit, and the most entertaining presidential debate there's been.
Yes, by far.
We can do better though. If we start implementing our ideas. Oh, also the boxing match has to take place on a slip and slide.
I think that would make it even better, more authentic.
And maybe you should let audience members throw water balloons at them while they're boxing.
Even better, yeah.
In fact, you could, if you wanted to raise money for it, you could charge people to do that thing where you throw an object at the target to dunk someone into water. I think that would be far more informative as to who should be president. Let me think.
It was our country is flying off a cliff.
See, this is why.
Yeah.
Well, there are 2 main parties that I would ever do if I went into politics. One is the Rhinoceros Party, just completely disrespect the entire process and point out how ridiculous it is, and just have fun with it. But actually, I would want to do actual campaigning to get attention drawn to the Rhinoceros Party. Some sort of, if not a publicity stunt, at least some kind of creative campaigning. The other would be an electoral reform party to fix the electoral system so that we don't have to choose between two jokes every time.
Yeah. Anyways, I have some calc homework that I need to finish up, so I will.
Unfortunate.
Yes, it is. It's vector calculus, so it's even worse. It makes me want to drink myself to a blackout state whenever I have to do it, but unfortunately, it's required for my degree, so I must attend to that.
Oof.